Hello everyone, I'm Joan Mugo, an instructor at Trina here at Powerland Project, and in this chapter we'll be going through data versus information. Okay, data versus information. So the objectives, this lesson will cover the following objectives. We'll be able to distinguish between data and information and provide examples of each. So by the end of this course, we'll be able to describe and give an example of how data becomes information. So all kinds of information, including school records, mobile telephone records, ringtone downloads, grocery purchases, are stored in databases. And we interact with databases every day, consciously or unconsciously. You've had a scenario whereby maybe you've gone to a hospital and the first time you go there, you've been asked to write down your phone number, your names, and all that information about you. And then the next time you come, they won't tell you to fill in a form again. They'll just ask you for maybe your name or your number, and then they'll be able to retrieve the records from a database. Okay, so even in supermarkets, in shops, all those kinds of examples. So it is important to understand what is stored in a database and what can be retrieved from it. So when you compare data to information, so if you work in the information technology industry, it is essential to understand how data is modeled and stored in a database. And if you work in any other industry, you'll most likely have to work with data stored somewhere on a computer and probably be required to use data in your job to create reports and or make decisions. Okay, so data versus information. So the words data and information, often they are used as if they are synonyms, but they have different meanings. So data, we define it as raw or unprocessed material, while information, on the other hand, is knowledge, intelligence, a particular piece of data with a special meaning or function. So for information, it's often the result of combining, comparing, analyzing, or performing calculations on data. So let us look at an example to further understand what that is. Okay, so these ones, we'll share this. I'll share this file, then we'll be able this PDF, and you'll be able to go through that at your free time. So let's go directly into looking at an example of data versus information. So when you think about test scores, for example, in one class, if every student receives a numbered score, the scores can be calculated to determine a class average. So the class averages can be calculated to determine the school average. So for example, in this case, the test score, if you're told one student has a 90, or you just find maybe somewhere someone has written 80 or 90, you won't really know what it means until that person maybe tells you that it's a student record. But once that raw data is inserted into a database, let's say you're able to record it as test score. The score for student A was 80, but for student B was 90. When you use it to calculate maybe a class average, now it comes out as information. And as you've seen here, we have defined information as it's often the result of combining, comparing, analyzing, or performing calculations on data. So as you look at another example here, you can see 1997 and $1 million. So you will not really know what that means. It's basically, we'll see it's raw data. But when it comes into a database, it is used to calculate next year's budget, for example. That is information. Okay, so the class averages we have seen can be calculated to determine the school average. And here you've seen the scores. If it's that 90 and 98, when the test scores 90 or 80, for example, it's raw data. But when it is used to determine a class average, that is information. So here we see the Oracle database software will transform recorded or stored data and statistics into useful information. So the database transforms the data into meaningful information. So here you've seen each student's test score is one piece of data, as you've said. And information now is the class's average score or the school's average score. Okay, so what is a database? It is a centralized and structured set of data that is stored on a computer system. It provides facilities for retrieving, adding, modifying, and deleting the data when required. This one we'll look at it when we move to the topic. When you start practicing SQL, whereby you'll see there are commands that are used to insert data into a database. update, to delete, and all that. So a database also provides facilities for transforming retrieved data into useful information. A database is usually managed by a database administrator. Okay, so the next one. So within most modern databases, you can store and retrieve a wide variety of data and documents. Inside the database, data is stored in its raw form. So when this raw data is queried or retrieved, it is transformed into more useful information. As you have said, we will insert raw data if it's first name, last name, and all that. But when you are able to use the SQL commands, maybe select maybe the first name and last name of a certain maybe employee from a database, then the record that will come out will be now meaningful information. But you'll see that when you start learning about SQL. So here's a question: what does a database have to do with my everyday life? So you can look at some examples that are giving over here. There's Amazon, there's Cisco, iTunes, Monster, YouTube, Netflix as well, and all those things that we interact with every day. So all these websites that we visit are driven by a database. So all those records, if it's Netflix, for example, all the movies that are there are in a database. So they are retrieved and then they are displayed so that we can be able to access them. Okay, so a question: if you had one of the jobs listed below, how might you use a database? So this is a question for you guys that you can ask yourself. How does a mechanic in a repair shop use a database? So maybe how does a taxi driver use a database? How does a landscaper use a database, even if it's manually or maybe through a system? Okay, so let's give an example with a taxi driver. So a taxi driver, an example of how we would say a taxi driver uses a database, you would say he has to keep records of maybe the customer information, where he picked maybe a client from and where he was able to drop that client to, and the mode of the payment that was made. So all that is how a taxi driver, for example, would use a database. So have you ever returned an item to a store without a receipt? So that's another question that you should ask yourself. If you have, maybe I can give my experience. So the last time I returned an item to a store without the receipt, there is some questions that they'll ask you so that they are able to check and see. So basically, they have to, since what you bought was stored into a database, basically there's some few questions they'll be able to ask you so that they can be able to see and or track the order that you had taken. So basically, the key terms used in this lesson is data, database, and information. In the summary, in this lesson, you should have learned how to distinguish between data and information and provide examples of each, and also describe and give an example of how data becomes information.